Hey everyone, so let's talk a little bit about some psychological whiplash. So we'll start here. You might know, what whiplash is. Have you ever experienced whiplash, for example, after a car accident? You're moving along at a decent rate of speed and then you're hit or you hit something, and the shift from going, you're driving along and then you're quickly and boom, you hit something and you stop suddenly means that your head and neck get tossed back quickly, and that particular sort of motion of muscle results in a painful injury. And just for those of you who want some whiplash history, the term actually developed earlier in the 20th century, and the doctor who named it that way was talking about the quick forward-backward motion of a whip, and that's where that name whiplash came from. So now imagine going through whiplash every day. If your body went through that, which I think some professional athletes do, you would be in traction and probably do some relatively permanent harm inside of a week. And yet, the psychological version of this is the experience of every person in a narcissistic relationship. So, before we go any deeper into this concept of psychological whiplash, I'm just going to take a quick second, let you know there's 2 in-person events that I'm having this fall for survivors. One is in London, England, from September 5th to the 6th. The other is in North Carolina from November 1st to 3rd. And there's also going to be an event for therapists, also in London, therapists and coaches, also in London, on September 7th. Just wanted to mention that. More information on these events can be found in the video notes. So let's go back to this idea of whiplash. Talk about whiplashing you. I tried to switch topics on you, didn't I? So let's get back to the psychological whiplash. Many survivors have to endure on a daily basis in narcissistic relationships. So you can use it as you're in a narcissistic relationship, you're kind of having a normal day. And then something as simple as you yelling out to them, hey, it's starting to rain, can you bring in the trash cans? Results in them having a raging 2-hour tantrum. Or you have a nice anniversary dinner and were even pleased that your partner thought of a lovely restaurant and even gave you a nice card. And then bam, they start raging at you later that evening because they feel that you were not grateful enough to them and didn't appreciate all the trouble they went to set up that special evening. You may go the extra mile in a job, stay late, double check everything, and then bam, you are yelled at for not telling them the time of the meeting, even though you emailed, texted, and called them with it. You are at a family dinner and everyone seems to be having a fine enough time, and then bam, your mother brings up an event from 5 years ago as though it was yesterday and won't let it go, pushing and accusing you until you almost start to cry. Those are just a few examples of what psychological whiplash can look like. It's the bam. It's one way, and then it rather quickly it shifts to another, and you're not ready for it because there's, like, again, an accident. That's the thing with whiplash injuries. We're not prepared for them. It's not like we're like putting on our brakes and think we're going to hit. Like it's all of a sudden like, boom, someone stops short and we bash into them, right? There's a lot of wait when psychological whiplash happening. So you're like, wait a minute, wait, what happened? We were just having a nice dinner, or it was just the trash cans. It's going to just take a second, or wait a minute, I told you 5 different ways about the meeting time. Or you say to your mother, like, I'm so confused. Like that thing you brought up, it happened 5 years ago. We were having such a good time. The whiplash most often shows up in our bodies. If you get a whiplash injury, it shows up as tension. And it shows up in our psychology as hypervigilance. And this whiplash is why many survivors of narcissistic relationships feel like they're chronically on edge, as though they can never relax and that they're forever anxious. Of course you're forever anxious. It's like sitting in a tense position in a car, always prepared for an accident. And the fact is, sitting in that tense position is probably going to make the whiplash worse. Over time, we never relax in a narcissistic relationship. Though those of us who tend to be more of the fawners in terms of our sympathetic nervous system response will find ourselves in the eternal fawn shame cycle to stay safe and then subsequently feel mad at ourselves and feel gross. Those of us who are freezers or flighters may remain in dissociated or stuck states, again, more shame. And there is a wide-eyed quality to people in narcissistic relationships, but not in a good way, in more of a I am watching a horror film way. Remember, you can't talk about the whole whiplash thing with the narcissistic person, right? They will blame you and tell you that you're the problem and that they aren't doing anything differently, but that they are just reacting to something that is wrong in you, which again adds more to your hypervigilance and anxiety, because then you might find yourself trying to change things about yourself and ultimately start silencing yourself. Human beings prefer equilibrium. Unless you're part of that tiny percentage of people who are genuine sensation seekers, the rest of us like rhythm and predictability. We like knowing what's next, and we like routine. When we have those things, we feel safe, and our nervous systems and our bodies relax a bit, which is why building in routine is such a big part of healing and mental health treatment. We also like realistic expectations. Things like, if I'm nice, then the person I'm with, well, that facilitates a warm interaction. If I were to ask something in an appropriate way, the other person will either do it or respond to it appropriately or calmly explain why they might not be able to do it. If I say thank you to someone, then that means I'm showing gratitude. But the narcissistic relationship is an alternate universe. They are people where inside of them an almost paranoid storm is always brewing. Everyone's out to get me. Everyone's mean to me. No one understands me. I am more special. How come everything's not going my way? Churning, grr, grr, angry, angry. And so your simple ask, your small mistake or oversight, or your thank you that wasn't enough, that wasn't telling them they're great enough, is filtered through their angry, aggrieved, entitled processing system. And so you get these wacky, intense, unsettling, whiplashy reactions from them. That is often one of the sort of the catalysts of the whiplash and why it is so confusing, because there is often nothing ostensible that is happening in the context that makes sense. For example, you didn't yell at them or something bad didn't just happen. But to the narcissistic person, because every day is not grandiose fantasy camp for them not feeling special enough is sort of their private internal experience as though something bad is happening, but it's simply something bad to them happening is that something great didn't happen to them that day. So what's the psychological equivalent of a neck injury from whiplash? You feel anxiety, vigilance, you can't sleep, you feel a sense of rumination, constant fear, perfectionism, obsessiveness, wondering if you are crazy, sadness, grief. And there's no neck brace to help treat it. The closest we have is radical acceptance, realistic expectations. I guess those are the equivalent of wearing a seatbelt. Breaking out of the trauma-bonded cycles, having social support, disengaging from the relationship, all the usual stuff. The whiplash also sets up an unfortunate cycle that means that the good moments, instead of being good, or even just the non-abusive moments, instead of being relaxed, we chronically find ourselves tensing up even at those moments because we know that the bad is just around the corner. And all the hypervigilance and watching every word we say and trying to be perfect, it's simply not enough. And while realistic expectations sound good in theory, it is actually really hard to prepare for this kind of shape-shifting and quick reactivity that we see in the narcissistic relationship. And it is exhausting to walk through life always on edge. There are only so many times you can say, it's them, it's not me, and still have to navigate someone who is the equivalent of living with a live grenade in your pocket. The whiplash is real, and it also makes the grief worse. A few decent days may leave you feeling in one of these relationships like, I can do this. But then without fail, their dysregulated or cruel and manipulative behavior or betrayal shows up again. And these mini sequences are grief sequences that can culminate into a melancholy that trails you in your life. Personally, I'm navigating a few of these situations right now, and I actually have to say I'm struck by how heavy I feel all the time. Personally, I think fender benders are easy compared to the daily whiplash of the narcissistic relationship. Sometimes knowing this can also help fuel self-compassion on those days when you feel like you are not at your best. Who would be if they just experienced whiplash? Thanks again.